Hey y'all, I'm Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. Hey, you guys, welcome back. We are so excited today to have in the studio Abel with Ready, Sight, Go. Abel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so I was so excited when I heard about you. You are a superstar. You are a CTVI, a certified teacher of the visually impaired, and certified for orientation and mobility. You don't hear about that very often, do you?
No, but I am credentialed. I am credentialed orientation mobility specialist.
Okay.
I'm still working on getting the comms though, which is this year. That's my goal, which would be so nice to add that in there. But yes, having both credentials is super rare, and some days I'm like, what did I get myself into? But but I couldn't pass it up because when you do the teacher of the vision impaired program, they convince you because they, oh, there's a grant. Oh, and it's only one more year of classes. Oh, and then you have to do your student teaching. And I'm like, okay, all right, sounds good. But I'm so glad I did it. It has brought so much more variety to what I do, and it has made I've never been bored at work. I will say that. This has been just one of the most exciting kind of jobs to be in. So it's amazing.
Absolutely. So, for us in Special Education Academy, we train people on, the 13 eligibilities. We talk about sensory needs, right? Vision impairment, hearing impairment, deaf, blind. When I sit in meetings, this is probably the most uncomfortable because obviously in schools, we don't have enough time or take enough time to teach teachers about disabilities. But vision impairment is such an LID, a low incident disability. So, so glad that you're doing that. There's so much knowledge that needs to be brought around this space. So, kind of tell us how you got started in your special ed journey.
The way I got started, I will say from the very beginning, I actually fought being an educator because the way I kind of started out life was being a student that struggled in school. And so having a learning disability early on and not understanding what that was, and then finally getting assessed in elementary school, and then and also never really being told as a kid like what an IEP was and being able to understand that process. That's kind of how my journey in education started. So it was a little bit rough. And then as I went through school, I really like learning, but I struggled. And as I went through the process of trying to just keep up with all the classmates and everything and not really understanding, I got reassessed again in junior high. And then I got some other accommodations that seemed to really help me. And then my freshman year, my parents were told some misinformation about what in the IEP meeting. And also, I think from friends not really understanding in the Mexican community in LA, really understanding what this process was. They were told that if I was kept on an IEP, that I would then be put in special classes only, and then I would then not graduate with a diploma, which was really important for my family, because that was a big thing to take pride in. And so they took away my accommodations the second part of my freshman year, and immediately you saw my transcripts just go down the tubes, F's and D's, and just struggling. I didn't have extended time anymore. I didn't have a quiet era to do testing. I mean, I was just kind of floundering. So, but then going through that process and then dropping out of high school with like a 1.5 GPA, thinking school's just not for me. I'm dumb. I just can't do this. So going from that, but then finally realized that I really do like learning, even though I struggle. So I want to go to college. So actually went to adult school at night while I was working to get a high school diploma. And I knew I wanted a high school diploma because that got me to college. So
Right.
got to college, and then that's when they had said your old IEP won't give you accommodations after 10 years. So they said we'll just reassess you, and then we'll see what that comes out to. And sure enough, they showed all the deficits that I had and then all the accommodations that would help, which was getting textbooks on digital formats, accessible formats, audio formats, being able to record lectures, having extended time, having a quiet place to test, using dictation. And wouldn't you know it, it was pretty amazing that college all of a sudden turned around to pretty much nearly all A's in every single class. And that's when I started having this epiphany. I'm like, I was not dumb. I just lacked the ability to have access. And it was access both ways. I couldn't get my thoughts out either. As they say, oh,
Right.
just write down what you know, prove yourself that you understand this. And I just couldn't. I couldn't decode the words. I couldn't, write them out. So, but as soon as I had those accommodations, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, and yeah, I got all the accolades for that. And then that's how I got into the education piece. And then because I dropped out of high school and because I felt I wasn't good at school, I had multiple careers, including being a job coach, trainer, a job developer. I worked in logistics for 10 years. And finally, I said, I think I want to work with like work in education. So I think I'm going to switch over. And all of
Well,
my close
I'm
friends
going to
said
just
that.
jump in real quick. There's
Yeah.
something so important that you touched on. I want to go back and unpack that, and then we'll get to how you landed here. But when you were talking, and thank God that you had that drive in you to keep going, because that's not what happens to most people. Most people that are not properly served in school, I promise you, will never have that third prong of the federal requirement, further education, because that is what you thought, because that was true based upon the grades you were provided. So just real quick, people will say online, and people say stuff because they don't know any better. And I was just as ignorant until I had a child that struggled, because I never struggled. Kind of speak to people listening that think, oh, well, Abel, he got a free pass, or he got to go to the front of the line. We make it easy for him. So kind of talk about, is that really the truth, or what was the truth?
Yeah, I've heard those comments as well, which has been really interesting because looking at things that are fair and equitable are
Right.
kind of slightly different, and then you're trying to understand that, just what is the goal of that accommodation? What is the goal of that recommendation? And it isn't to get this advantage to things. It is to kind of even the playing field. As somebody who has an auditory processing disorder that's pretty severe, you could put a word in front of me that I've never seen, and it doesn't matter how long you give me. My brain cannot decode it. I cannot sound it out. Sound does not translate into language the same way that other people do. But I can recall information. I can pull information out. I can prove that I understand the context and the curriculum and the knowledge and be able to express it and use it, manipulate it, engage with it. And at the end of the day, education, the goal is to provide this knowledge for kids to, be independent, to have employment, to have a quality of life. And so,
Right.
and if you're telling somebody you don't get to have that because you're different, I just don't that is equitable, So, yeah. So I think that that is something that even today I have to tell students as well, my own students on my caseload, to say this is the kind of stuff that you might face, and let's talk about what that looks like. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting when people say it. Like if we ask you as a teenager, would you like to struggle, or would you like not to struggle? Right? When people go, oh well, somebody gets a wheelchair ramp, or they get to go to the front of the line. I'm like, would you like to not be? Would you like to be in a wheelchair and not walking? This is no advantage, right? So, thank you for sharing that. That's so important. And for you, like so many kiddos, your disability is invisible, right? You don't have a white cane, and nobody's giving you nursing services. You don't have some physical malady that we can see. And, for kiddos that have disabilities that we can't see, and we don't have any experience with them, we have all of these ticker tape of, Abel's he's lazy. If he came prepared, if he wanted to, if he was motivated, I'm like, disability doesn't need a pep rally. It's not
Yeah.
like, did you
Yeah.
say, can somebody motivate me? No, you couldn't process sound. Like it was like, oh, this is so exciting. I'm struggling. And so that was so great the way you said that. So
Yeah. Just try harder was the one that a teacher had told me. And I was like, I don't,
I
uh,
am trying harder, actually.
yeah.
You
I
have
was
no
just-
idea how hard I'm trying. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And what
Yeah.
I always say is like, Abel's my boss. And he said, Karen, on Monday, we're going to give you all the food and coffee, great lighting. These are all the parts of a transmission. I just want you to put it together. And then Abel comes back after 8 hours and he says, why didn't you do it? I said, oh, I don't know how to do it. That's okay. We'll just try again tomorrow. I won't know it tomorrow. Just try again the same way. And so kids with disabilities, the same way is going to frustrate you and the student. And so I love that you said
Yes.
access. My uniqueness is access. You know, what do I do for families? Without access to those services, you lose opportunities, and it's every kind of opportunity. So,
Yeah.
super excited about it. So, kind of tell me how you had a bunch of different jobs. How did you land in? I would like to be a teacher of the visually impaired and certified O&M. How did that come to be?
Yeah, I had a few career changes working in logistics for 10 years. Has been, but it was neat to have these other jobs because all those skills that I had gathered has, I think, made me an even better teacher of the vision impaired and orientation mobility specialist. Because working in logistics, I can turn any box into anything you need, streets, buildings, with like curriculum to, for them to access. So I'm glad I got that in a good tape gun, so in a glue gun. So, but going from that piece to then switching over to education was really funny because I was like, I can't be a teacher. And sure enough, when I started realizing I really did like and every job too that I had, I would be the one that would make the training manual. I would be the one to start putting processes in place. I'm like, I
You
basically was
were
teaching.
the teacher. But I don't want to be a teacher because this I don't during the day I'm just teaching. Yeah. Yeah.
And then when I finally made the switch, my very close group of friends, they're like, they all, like five or six of them were like, of course you're happy being a teacher. We all saw it. We all knew it. Like you were the only one fighting it. I'm like, yeah, that's true. So, but finally when I made the switch, I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave working with adults with disabilities, go into educational setting. And and my goal was to be a special education teacher. So, at the time I went in, and I took a position as a paraeducator first. I wanted to kind of see what the landscape was about, and I ended up in an autism program, and I really liked it there. But it was just like a sub position, and finally a permanent position came up, and it was for a para in the visually impaired department. And I said, great, I will. And at the point, I was like, I just need to get a job anywhere so I can be permanent, so I can then kind of like get all this stuff in instead of subbing. So I went in, got the job. During the interview was really funny because they were asking me like, do you mind driving your own car? Do you want to, are you okay learning Braille? And I'm like, I love bumpy things. I would have said anything. I would have like, yeah, I'll walk
I
backwards
just
and do
wanted to
Braille.
learn Braille while I'm driving a car.
Yeah. Oh, that's a dual credential there. So, and so then I went in there, and then as I went into this field that I had no clue about, I was like, oh my gosh, like you guys have more toys, you guys have more
Yes.
equipment. Also the diversity too is we work with students from infant to 22 with
Right.
all different backgrounds, kids that are intellectually gifted and kids that have behaviors and kids that have like, and I'm like, so I was really intrigued by the variety. And then the next thing I knew, I think 3 months later, I enrolled into the credential program. And then I was like, and then I fell in love. I fell in love with the type of work, the problem solving that we do every day to try to get these kids access to things. I mean, it has been wonderful. So, and yeah, now, gosh, 8 years ago, I think that's when it was. So,
So you worked in, so you got the credentialing. You're in California, correct?
yes,
Tell our audience where you are.
I'm in Sacramento, California.
Okay,
And
so you got the TVI, so you're working in high school, elementary school. Where are you working?
I'm oddly enough, I'm actually covering schools in 3 counties right now. So because if people don't know, there is just a national shortage of teachers of the vision impaired. So I do cover a pretty wide span, and it's all up here in Northern California. And that's kind of what I've been doing. And I think the youngest kid on my caseload right now is 4, and the oldest kid on my caseload is 22. So yeah, just a span, which is great. Again, I love the diversity of the students that I get to work with.
And so how do schools find you if they need the great Abel? Would they find you?
Well, we're listed with the Department of or the California Department of Education as a non-public agency, and then there's our website. If you Google to like Education Vision Services, I think we're like 2 or 3, and that's pretty much how people have been finding us, and that's been great. Yeah, it's been really great to provide these services for in person. I mean, yeah, it's been really cool too, where sometimes even parents will find us to ask for support. And those have been really great too, to just to kind of connect parents with resources and then kind of share that information in a way that the school district will understand like these needs a little bit better. Because I think even with administration, like they don't even know quite what we do either. And trying to bridge that understanding from administrator to what we do. I actually had an administrator one time, she's like, I don't know what your job is, and I don't even think it's real. Like I was like, no,
Oh,
it's real. So
real.
my
Yeah.
student loans will prove that. So,
Yeah. So your website is amazing. Ready, Site, Go. So kind of talking about and you guys can go there and find Abel and his team. So I want to unpack vision for a little bit.
yeah.
For kiddos that are visually impaired, it's a lot to overcome as an advocate for the committee, right? We're used to kids with autism and speech impairment and dyslexia. That all that other stuff, yeah, I don't know, right? And so when we encounter a student that has a visual impairment, we're completely deferring to the CTVI, which is great if they're a good CTVI. So one of the things that I come up against is vision minutes, right? And so I live in Texas, where we have the TSBVI, Texas State School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. There's nobody better. And I was at a meeting one time with a student who is visually impaired, cortical vision impairment, CVI. And I said, so on the schedule of services, I think this is probably a clerical error, but it said he gets 0 minutes. And she goes, that's not a clerical error. I said, oh, so you're going to D and Q him? She goes, well, of course not, Miss Cunningham. Well, 0 means he ain't need nothing. And I said, how did you get this number? And she went like this. I gave him the visit. And it was back in the olden days when we went in person. I was like, don't hit her. That's a crime. That's a crime. I don't know what visit you had. So kind of talk to our listeners and parents, because we have this very unholy alliance with school districts, right? If Abel's a TVI and he said it, that's it. If the principal says something, that's it. And I don't think people in schools are wrong. I don't think that they're like, ooh, plotting against you. But what they don't know will handicap your child even more. So as a teacher of the visually impaired, how do you go about determining in the correct ethical way service minutes, knowing that it might be adjusted, that a student needs based upon the acuity of their vision impairment?
So that visit form that they have
Oh,
from Texas, what's the same for Visual Impairment Intensity Services of Texas, that is a tool. That is that and the nice thing about that tool is it makes the TVI consider all areas of the ECC that has to be related to vision. But that is just one tool. I know there's a couple other tools like the Michigan Rating Scale. The concern to rely all of your kind of I guess determination for those minutes on just one or two tools will limit really like those recommendations and accommodations for that specific student. I have done over 200 assessments, and I think out of those assessments, I can't remember a single one that's been exactly the same. Because as I assess students, there are these very measurable accommodations for every single kid. And so I think part of that is to consider something like the visit to look at those areas. But as you go through all the requirements of what is in a functional vision assessment, with luckily in California, and I know in other states, we have the California guidelines for students with visual impairments, and it kind of lists all the things that you should be checking for, which is the near, distance, color, contrast, lighting, et cetera. Um, when and I as a teacher with I try to stay in my lane. So I try to make sure that if I am recommending a minute or consultative services, it is related to the visual impairment piece. Can I not do this thing because of the visual impairment? I want to
yeah.
respect the other specialists in that area. And so determining minutes, I have to account for grade level, age appropriateness, human development, and then that visual access in all aspects of just a functional piece. Then there's the expanded core curriculum to consider. And then the other area that I do for it's a assistive technology checklist for students with low vision. And that got put together by some wonderful people, which also kind of and I do all sections for every single kid, even kids who might be nonverbal and in a wheelchair. I have to then still consider it. Will this keyboard work for the student? Will this software work for the student? The nice thing is when if all the teachers of the vision impaired were to go through this process and consider each area, then at least you know you didn't leave anything off that student might need for that service. And so when we look at the direct minutes, we account for all those pieces, and then we kind of then calculate how long with this student meeting them where they're at intellectually and their grade level and what's appropriate. How long do you think this student will take to get this skill set to access their learning environment, which also would include their home or out in the community, because if they have homework, they're going to have to learn how to use these tools at home too. So just looking at that, so those are multiple factors. Those are all the factors that I consider before I start. Like when I look into direct minutes and console minutes. And so sometimes I've had people come to me and they were like, oh, this student, Abel, this student, just don't even bother with the assessment. I said, why? He's like, well, they're in a hospital bed. They're pretty nonverbal. There's not much you can do. And sure enough, this is one of my awesome experiences doing assessments. I go there, I bring a black curtain, so there's nothing that visually the student can see except what I present. I hold this little white square, and I have my timer, waiting until I get fixation and track and follow. And then I actually have a measurable data point. And sure enough, she was able to, even the nurse who was with her, she was like, oh my gosh, she's doing it. She's doing it. And I'm like, I know, isn't it amazing? So it's just taking all those data points into consideration and being able to really, every single kid that we assess, that plan, that FVA or that functional vision assessment report is only good for that one kid. That's it. It is so specialized for that one kid that I can't copy and paste that for another kid. And so, and same with the service minutes, considering all those areas. So anyways, that's how I kind of do it. And I think that's why I love assessments. They're like wonderful, beautiful puzzles to put together. And it's amazing when you see them implement these accommodations and the kids are happy and they can see and they can access. I love it. It's my favorite part.
Yeah, we have so you touched on so many things, evaluations, right, which are all in the Epic IEP that we just released. So when let's play advocate. So you're at the table and somebody says, to you, like this person did, he gets 0 minutes. So what would be a great response to, initiate a conversation and dive deeper? Because often I feel like you didn't look at the totality of the information. That is right. The OT doesn't talk to the brailleist, who doesn't talk to, we're just all in silos. So what would your response, which would probably, my response wasn't that good. So what would your response have been to her if you were the advocate for a parent and she said he gets 0 minutes? You would say, knock it off. Or what would you, I'm just kidding. What would you say?
Well, I would go line by line, falling back on the assessment. Okay, let's go through the assessment. Did you consider each area of that the student needs to access things or can't access things to their visual impairment, that they will need design instruction for them that will help them either learn something, access something, learn how to use an accessibility feature, learn a strategy, and anything like that would require somebody actually teaching that skill and making it measurable. And so, and oftentimes, sometimes that gets missed where, did you consider hygiene? Did you consider, social skills? How close do they have to be to somebody before they recognize their face? There's all these aspects to vision. And as soon as you have that visual impairment and you're unable to do something, that is where you can get that design instruction. And then, of course, for example, say if a student has multiple impairments and there's a cause and effect and they want to learn that piece, well, that's great. Let the special education teacher implement that in her curriculum.
Right.
But then what size does the button have to be? What's the distance? What's the lighting? Does it matter, how close they are? I have students where their vision is affected by their physical fatigue. So trying to really account for each area. In my assessments, last time I checked, there's 260 data points that I take for each assessment. And so it's a lot, but if you consider it, it's
we like a lot. The more
near
data you have, the better you have the ability to make an informed decision.
Yes, yeah, and that leads to those individualized accommodations. That is key. So if somebody had recommended 0 minutes, I would then go back to their assessment, and then I would also go through the expanded core curriculum. So, which area did you think that they are sufficient? Like, let's take career exploration. That's one of the areas. And let's say they're in high school. Well, in high school, they should be considering looking at employment, and do they know how to, say what accommodations they need because of their visual impairment at a work site? Do they know what kind of jobs to explore after high school? There's all these things, and you're telling me that there's no instruction that you're going to give this student that needs it. Like, and so I would kind of break it down in that sense. I would still want it to be linked to something measurable. I mean, I
Right.
have students who are very young, and they're very intellectually gifted. And there's certain areas I'm like, oh wow, no, social skills, age appropriate.
Right.
Oh, living skills appropriate. And I'm like, oh wow, like there's not really a lot of need in this area.
Right.
And yeah, so it really kind of depends on all those factors. But I had a friend just text me a couple days ago where the kid had like 20 over 1,000. So this kid had to be like a foot away from the distance chart. So I mean, and then it was like, oh, 30 minutes a month. I was like, oh, and so it's just kind of like
I spend
looking.
more time than that putting my eyebrows on. Like where did you just pull this out of your back pocket? And you know
I
what that teacher told me that day? She said, well, he's in life skills. They talk to you like the parents aren't sitting there, and he doesn't have use of his arms and legs. And I was like, I better watch my mouth because I have to tell my pastor, like, stop it, right? So he has value. And we had just got him a communication device, and she said, Andy has a communication device which is hooked onto his chair, and it really gets in the way. Oh, I'm like, don't say it. And she goes, and I have to move it out of the way. And the mom said, you have to put it back afterwards, right? And so I asked her, my questions, they're always a trick, right? But my answers in my question. So I said, Miss Smith, what visual materials have you provided him during the instructional year? And she said, wait for it, Abel. I brought a bag of stuff at the beginning of the year and left it with the teacher. Are you Santa Claus? And I just repeated her, Abel. I said, you brought a bag of stuff at the beginning of the year? Yeah. I said, and that's for the whole year? Yes. I said, so after the first month, there's no more acquisition of learning, or other kids aren't learning something else? And she said, that's good enough for him. I was like, I got to take a break. I got to walk this off. And because parents often, this, have shame about their child with a disability, or they are made to feel, and they do feel like we're a burden and bothersome. And parents don't stay in the game in the meeting because they just want the meeting to be over. But these meetings, this, between 3 and 22 are going
Yeah,
to set up the entire trajectory of your life when you have
yeah,
comorbidities. And so,
yes.
and also on that IEP, they had all these minutes for O&M. I said, so O&M is not eligibility, but vision is. O&M has 4 goals. And you're like, I'll wave once in a while. And so, and she never would change it. We had to go to mediation. And ultimately, the parent pulled the parent. Because what we do, Abel, and maybe not in your great state, well, Miss Cunningham, we have to defer to Abel. He's the expert. Well, then why don't people just send an email? It's
Yeah.
the committee. But and I think kind of what you're talking about. Do you have a course, a program, or products that people could buy for you if they were just, I don't say just a parent or an advocate, to know when I have a kid with a vision impairment or I serve them, what are pieces that I should be asking the VI teacher?
That is a great question. I'm still kind of putting together a few things in our
Okay.
field. Again, it's a young field. One of the things that we do is we do take 30-minute meetings with parents if they have any questions about their student, their
Okay.
recommendations, their stuff for free, just because I know the need is so high.
Yeah.
I think what's been really helpful too is just trying to tackle this on both sides of this IEP process. It's both
Right.
educating teachers of the visually impaired and orientation mobility specialists on how to do these assessments with more data points to then be confident in those meetings to say, this is why I'm recommending this lamp, or this is why I'm recommending, 20.5. Like, so being able to train them up, but then also, I guess what I tell people, I'm pleasantly persistent. So,
Oh, I like
because
that.
we
Keep
have
me.
yeah, because we
Yeah.
have to be diplomatic in working within the structure. Because sometimes that does I mean, I've seen problem cases where I jump in and I'm like, ooh, okay, this one's gonna take maybe a couple years to kind of get everything where we need to get, and let's
Yeah.
tackle the big stuff. And so. I think that has been really helpful. And then the other aspect is there's a national shortage. So I'm constantly trying to recruit really good people into our field that, are dynamic. They can learn multiple skills. They want to help people, So that's the other thing that I do. I'm just trying to just recruit. My goal, actually, I have a personal goal, is actually to recruit 20 teachers of the vision impaired and 20 orientation mobility specialists. 2020, get it? So that's my personal
Yeah.
goal. But I'm just trying to do all those aspects. And I feel for parents too. There are some wonderful resources online as well, but sometimes you need some fresh eyes on what it is that the school is recommending and not really understanding the specialty. And so, but yeah, so.
Yeah. So you're in California. Have you ever had an occasion to serve a family that used to live in Nevada?
Yeah, that used to, no, I don't think so.
So I had a student one time, and so when I'm in meetings, I'm like, we have to follow the federal law, except for in some states. And so I had a student that was visually impaired, a twin, brain bleed at birth, not unusual. And we had fought in Texas to get him the services that he needed. He had cortical vision impairment, so I mean, we worked, got it all done, and then they moved to Nevada. And this is in the olden days when we had Skype. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yep.
And so I was just on the phone yelling at people because I don't know if people would call me pleasantly persistent, but I'm persistent. Yeah. And so I'm kind of trying to walk them through saying that they understand. And she said, well, Miss Cunningham, in Nevada, which is the only place I've ever heard of it, they have it written into their state statutes that you have to be so blind. And I'm not being disrespectful, but she said he's not blind enough. And so they were putting him in an adaptive behavior program because he needs to get his behavior together. And I'm like trying not to scream over the phone. I said, do you know that his vision impairment is so bad that he'll get down the floor to see if that's a hole in the ground or a sock? Yep, we've seen that. But his behavior needs, and it is the only state that has it written into the state statute that you have to be this blind. And so I can't help everybody, but if you're listening and you have a child that's visually impaired, you're not allowed to move to that Nevada. I'm sure they're lovely people, but I'd never seen that written in there. And so kind of talk about kiddos that have vision impairments that we often are like, well, they're a behavior problem, right? Because we want people to act like we do, speak like we do at the rate of which we do, finish the work. And, we teach to the group. So talk about the processing speed, the need to wait, which is something I've never done. But just because it takes somebody longer to produce something doesn't mean that there's an academic deficit. So kind of talk to that.
Yeah, and sorry to hear about that state statute. That's very concerning.
It's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry that you didn't meet the threshold for being
He literally
disabled
said
enough.
he's not blind enough, and I was like, oh my god. I
And
said,
who says that's enough? And then even with some kids with cortical visual impairment, they have 20/20 vision. It's a visual processing thing and the visual latency where they just need that extra time to have their brain kind of see, oh, something is there and to accommodate for the time. And yeah, oh, sorry, it took me a second to be
yeah,
baffled by so many things.
I was baffled by it too.
That was new for me, by the way. I've
Yeah.
heard some really crazy stuff over the years, but that one was new. So yeah, looking at the student as a whole student and then being and addressing those things, behavior is one thing. I will say that behavior is one thing. But what's really interesting, I started doing some research out in the US, trying to figure out is in any type of like school psychologist or behaviorist program, do they have curriculum? Do they have classes that specifically talk about students with visual impairments and behavior? And I could not find any. And so, which was really interesting because during my training, we were trained on that. So when I started looking at some of these kids that were struggling with some behaviors, they did not include me in it. And all of a sudden, this kid's, having struggles at school. Finally, I joined the team, and I'm just like, hey, when this happens next, let me go in. And I'm just gonna observe. I'm just gonna see what. And wouldn't you know it? It was really funny that they kept trying to do things for kids who, again, they have legal blindness. They can't really see things very well or not at all, no light perception. And I see this para take this like little streamer light thing and go in front of the student, no warning, and just go tickle, tickle. And she freaked out and started attacking. I'm like, I would do the same thing to you because That's disturbing. That's shocking, you know? And so, and another incident was this other student was holding a basketball, and this staff member was like, "Oh, pee's over," all the just grabbed it out of the student's hand, freaked the student out, you know? And I was just like, "Well, you're not understanding their world, and you're not understanding how even kids with low vision."
Right.
It's the same thing that happened to me, you know. Oh, just look, just try harder, just look. You just gotta
I want
look.
to hear one more person tell a blind student to look over here.
Oh, yeah.
You should have to like do 1,000 push-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there was another student where he was at his desk and got in trouble because there was a staff member that was just out of, again, he had very narrow vision and was just like then was like here holding his water bottle. Oh, here,
Yeah.
just grab it here. And then it's like that's it. I can't take. And I'm like, you're getting upset, and he doesn't even know that you were talking to him. You're out of his field of view. Like so yeah, there was another one too where a student was like, "Oh, the student's not tracking my eyes when I'm speaking in front of the class." I'm like, "Uh, you your eyeballs? You want your little time? Oh, okay. Well, you know that student can't see you, especially when you put them in the back of the class. So, why don't you put him where he's supposed to be 5 feet from instruction and from the board where he can actually access your beautiful teaching. So it's again
It's about
trying to
access.
be that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the non-knowledge, I don't have a problem with. The arrogance with
Mhm.
I'm allergic to. I had a kiddo who's amazing. He's no longer in a district, but we went through a lot of stuff, and we actually won a due process hearing. And the hearing officer said the school district's vision program, I'll send it to you, needs a complete overhaul. That's a pretty big statement. But while we're in the hearing, and I'm not an attorney, I'll never be an attorney. I didn't graduate college, but I'm not a quitter, Abel. I've dropped out of a lot of colleges. And so, but I'm allowed to represent families through due process in many states. And so, but we were with an amazing law firm, and the attorney is doing a direct examination for the teacher. And, people don't understand vision impairment. They certainly don't understand cortical vision impairment. And he said, you had reported that the student was a problem because they weren't following your rules in class. And she's like, yeah. Like, oh, okay. And he goes, what are your rules? And she said, well, I don't know what they do in other classes, but when it's time to get to work and to listen to me, I will wait till you're all paying attention. Good news, attention is free. Like he needs to pay attention. And so the attorney, who's much nicer than me, she goes, hey, can you describe what you mean? Yeah. When he doesn't even look at me when I'm giving him the directions. And he said, but you know he has cortical vision impairment. She goes, yeah, it's on his paperwork. So when he turns his head, that's actually when he can see you. And she goes, I don't think so. Oh my gosh. Like it's so sometimes I'm like, I don't even know why Abel did an evaluation and Karen did an evaluation. We're just going to walk on assumptions. And the truth was,
Yes.
and this
Yeah.
is terrible, she said, we don't have kids in wheelchairs that are blind in general ed classes. And, we don't, right? We are so used to, and God forgive me and everybody listening, we still put those kids in the room down the hall, right? So if you have equipment and you have needs and you have you're fed with a tube or you need help with hygiene, we put all those kids in the room down the hall, and life skills is absolutely appropriate for a certain population. And then we tell parents this, oh, Abel, I mean, I would hate for Billy. The hall is so busy. There's other kids in the hall. Okay. So we do that. And I think very quickly we tell parents this is a safer thing to do. And you've handicapped them even more, right? Oh, you have a vision
Yeah.
impairment, you're in a wheelchair, life skills. And that is not looking at the whole child. The law says that we write an IEP to enable a student to progress appropriate in light of their circumstances. And so
Yeah.
speak to our listeners that a vision impairment does not mean that you have a cognitive impairment necessarily. Can you talk to that?
Yes, yeah. Visual impairment is one of the rarest disabilities out there, but it could happen to anybody. There's over 300 different eye conditions. So, looking at students from all different backgrounds, I have had students who were taking calculus in high school, and and I have students that were in junior high and in the GATE program, and excelling and learning some really advanced skills. I had a student that was in he was working on a touch typing goal to be more efficient, and he was supposed to get what was grade level appropriate for him speed, but he knocked it out of the park. I mean, he was like typing, I can't remember, 120 words a minute. I mean, it was really, so kids with different backgrounds are, just because you have a visual impairment doesn't automatically mean that there's intellectual disability attached to that. And even some adults that I know that have visual impairments, I have people go up to them, or I see people go, "Hello, how's it going?" I'm just like, "Oh my God, did their IQ drop by like 20 point? Like,
How
what are you
are
doing?"
you today?
Yeah.
Are you having a good, are you having a good day? I don't,
Yeah. Are you okay? Like,
yeah.
so it's been really nice to, just because you have a cane, just because you, even if you have the adaptive cane, or if you're a Braille reader, does not mean that, that doesn't tell you anything about that specific person. There's I even have students who have multiple disabilities, and they excel in one skill in assistive technology, or they have kind of, these other gifts, and I'm like, you would never know it. And so it really is kind of very specific to the person. Luckily, the program that I was in, we had professors who had visual impairments, and it was beautiful to see that, and to break a lot of stereotypes going through the program of them having careers and families and traveling and being independent, and dressing way better than I do. I mean, it was, so that was a really nice that the program that I went to had that representation and people to learn from, like, real life, and so
Right.
I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, we have to break those notions to people who don't know any better, almost weekly, it seems. But that's, you know, why stop? We just got to keep educating people.
Yeah, we kind of going back to when I was at the National Federation for the Blind conference in New Orleans. So too busy, two hotels on different sides of the streets. I thought, well, they didn't plan ahead, right? And the only people that were successfully crossing the street were the people with the vision impairment, because they actually waited, and the rest of us were like, "Should we go? Should we go?" Like, people that can see, we don't follow directions, right? And so when what we don't walk through, we often don't have compassion for, right? So if Abel and I are out sitting somewhere and having lunch, and somebody walks up who's 600 pounds, both of us are going to have a ticker tape that goes down in our heads of how that person got there and what they can do. And so I would say to people, because I used to be those person, assume competency. What I do know, and Abel knows, is that children can learn. Adults, we don't necessarily have data on that yet, right? Because we get so stuck in how our world experience is coming. And so one of my partners, Travis Moses, and he's gone on, not like to heaven, but he's gone on to, he's actually working for the National Federation for the Blind. And he
Awesome.
was amazing. And he's like, I can't believe you hired me. I'm like, because you're a good advocate, right? And so, and he would be in meetings, and he would say, in those lovely 6 states that you can't record or whatever. And
Mhm.
he would say, well, I need to record because I have a vision impairment. And somebody said, I can't tell. And several states told him no. And so, it's just, we just have, I don't know what's worse, no knowledge or the wrong knowledge. And then one of the things that we see a lot, and his parents fought for him, thank goodness. He graduated illiterate, but went on to college and is doing great things. Talk about, one of the things that I try to help with is that, you're my client, and Mr. and Mrs. Perez, and then for your child needs these services, whatever they are. Well, I'm also expecting my client to keep doing it, right? And so a lot of times, I know you see this, and probably your team, is that you guys get all these great services, vision services, and O&M, but we don't do it at home. So kind of talk to our listeners about how important is it, whatever they're doing, parents should be doing, and what kind of supports are available to them to replicate those services.
So there is an area that, as teacher for the vision period, to consider is, are what the skills and tools and implementations happening at school, are those transferring into the home? And
Right.
so a couple examples I can give you is, in writing an IEP, I write that the student should have a personalized l- large screen laptop, specify what size it is, because I assess for that. So,
Yeah.
because then that way the student can then take those devices home and then be
Right.
able to implement those things. And part of consulting with the IEP team, which the student and the parents are part of that IEP team, I get to consult with them to then be able to say, this is what like this looks like at home. And that those are students who need to access their education at home with the devices that they get to access it at the school. Now, I also have students who have multiple disabilities, and I will do like a tactile kind of schedule at school, but then I will also create one at home. And so then that way, when you
I
wake
always
up,
ask what that IEP means, you guys.
yeah,
And I always say, Bob and Cindy and George, if you're doing something amazing, if you'll make a copy, mom and dad will reinforce it. And they're like, they will? Yeah, right. Because so many families, this, whether they're deaf and hard of hearing, deaf, blind,
yeah.
visually impaired, nobody's doing vision services at all at home. And we've got to have it over in the home as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially with orientation mobility. I don't want to misquote this. I believe is Assembly Bill 927, where it had passed in California in 2020, and it was essentially saying that orientation mobility specialists that were struggling to work with students out in the community, like actually out at stores
Might
and
be
at
important.
homes. Yeah, especially if you're teaching them how to
80%
cross
of the
street.
time successfully crossing the street. That's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like I can't replicate traffic in school. But it was nice that that passed because it meant like we could work with students at outside of school hours and outside of school, and given us that permission instead of having to fight it every situation. I actually had two students that have night blindness, and it was unsafe for them to cross the street at night. So I would meet with them at 7:30 at night. Their mom would, mom would come. We would
I
go
mean, you
to
could replicate that at noon. Why not, Abel?
because we can't replicate night. And so, and there's a, oh, just put on like a little sleep shade and just pretend. I'm like, it's not the same.
Let's
It is not.
pretend.
Yeah. So it's not going to work. So, and that's the other reason why I love my job because it's not consistent, I guess, and it keeps me like on my toes. But I like them like, oh, well, I'll start late this day because I'm going to be working with this student at night. And, but did he learn to do his lane by lane scanning? Did he, was he able to use his video magnifier to see the street sign? Yes, because we did some training during the day to learn some concepts, and then we have to implement, and then we have to test to see can the student do this. And so I think working with, and then also working with mom. I mean, working with mom, she had to meet me. This was in one of those rural areas where, when I was assessing the kid, I'm like, hey, when you push the pedestrian signal, you see like the little guy running or the red hand, and he's like, no, what are you talking about? Not realizing this town was so small, they had no no pedestrian lights, so we had to drive.
And had a horse crosswalk. If you hear
Basically,
hooves, stop.
a couple stop signs. So they had to meet me 20 minutes away from home to the town that had one. And so, and then being able to work at night. So it's just doing those things as an educator and meeting the students literally where they're at. And then supporting parents too. There are resources with California School for the Blind, the Lighthouse for the Blind. In Sacramento, we have Society for the Blind. I had worked with a nonprofit in Stockton, which was the Community Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. So I do share those resources too, because those are also extracurricular things that they can do, they have access to. There's also Enchanted Hills Summer Camp, which is great because it's just families and students of specific grade levels that get to have the camp experience. They, do archery and swimming, and it's just really great. So yeah, bridging that gap, I feel like that is part of our role. That is full access. That is, your educational environment is home and school and out in the store and going to concerts and the fair and living life,
Living
reading
life.
reading a menu when you go to the restaurant so you can order for yourself. I mean,
Right.
this is the job. Like, and yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. One of the things that when you were discussing that, we were in a school district and the students visually impaired, and we're out in suburbia, right? Or the boondocks, we call it in Texas. And so the ask, which is I don't really ask, right? I require for you to fulfill the ECC is that we would need to go into downtown Houston, which has plenty of lights. And she said, we're not budgeted for that. I said, you are. And so how important would it be that he can cross the street safely? Very important. Well, and so she said, I don't think so. I think if that doesn't exist in our school district, we don't have to do it. Okay, the book of made up laws is going to be very big, right? And I had another teacher in the same district say for another kiddo, I don't know if we have to magnify her stuff. Wait for it, Abel. She could just get up and walk closer to the Promethean board. Okay, so that's why I carry a pool noodle in case I have to whack somebody. It doesn't leave a mark. And I feel like I won't go to jail for that. And so I just want people to be open to learning. I don't know that I've ever been at a more moment by moment learning than when I work with CTVIs like Abel or ONM, or even these conferences like the National Federation for the Blind conference is $25. Go there. And I remember I met a man, and you might know him, but he does it's with the Lutheran church, and he brailles books. And he had I'm very visual, right? And he had such a good example. And I said, they won't do this. And he goes, yeah, because it's a lot of work, right? And he said, let me give you an example. So they braille Bibles for prisons, right? And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. He goes, do you know how big the Bible is? I said, no. He goes, it's 7 feet wide. And that was really, and one of the things I say is when I'm in a meeting, I have to say things that people can see or feel. And Abel does that really well. When you're at meetings, IEP meetings, you have to say something so that other person has a understanding of their world, right? But when he said that, that made all the sense in the world. It is a lot of work, but by law, every student in America that's in a public school is required to receive their educational product and their learning media channel. I like to trick people up. I'm like, do you know what Trevor's learning media channel is? And she's like, I don't know, CBS. No, she didn't say that.
Okay.
Can you just say stuff like, I'm like, here we go. We're cooking with gas. Do you know what his primary learning media is? And she goes, in school. Okay, I'm going to go. It's just like, it's on the paper. She's like, where did you get that? It's in the vision supplement. What is that? Page 78. And so we have all this paperwork, Abel. We don't read it. And if you are at the table and you don't understand, just say, Abel, could you explain to me what this means? Expanded core curriculum, right? It's very simple. Yeah. We are going to have to expand his acquisition of learning solely that what exists at state standards. And so I tell people, and I'm sure you do, if you don't have all your questions answered, it's still your meeting. You are the number one stakeholder. You're the parent of this child. And staying there a little longer, having an extra meeting, getting information is paramount. And so for me, I would always say, hey, Abel is your O&M, he's your VI, set up a meeting with parents because you can provide them out of that meeting such information that will just help them learn and not just their student, right?
Yes. Yeah. Especially because with vision, I often tell people when a student is being assessed, let me go first, because if you are going to assess a student's abilities on social skills, but we don't know how close they can't even see a person or a peer or a staff member, and let alone how close they need to be if they can see facial expressions before you start putting tests forward, or even contrast, if they can't see colors that are very similar.
The word contrast, don't say contrast, Abel. Oh my gosh. I had a lady at the beginning of the great COVID, and the parent, obviously the kids are home, and big screen TV. So we log on and she called me, and thank goodness she called me. I thought she was going to kill the teacher. And she said, hey, Billy, look at this. Look at this. Are you paying attention? Look at this. I painted his mane black. And because what we told her in the meeting is he has to have what? High contrast. And my friend was cutting up, vegetables in the kitchen. I said, just get out, just get in the car and drive away. She's like, because they don't know. And so, because they're not trained. So kind of talk about what, and I know you would take everyone that you got, but if you have a student with the vision impairment, what should you be asking the IEP team to do at the beginning of the year with the VI teacher and the student that has a need?
As the teacher of the vision impaired, I'm usually proactive. And so if I can know at the end of the school year what teacher that student is going to have, I will send them the accommodations and recommendations. I will then I usually try to see the teachers before school starts, right, and then try to implement that. And it's helpful because we typically start before everybody else because we have equipment to move. I make friends with the janitors who can let me into classrooms. I can plug in CCTVs and the front office. And I try to always treat them well by getting snacks for winter break before they leave. And then I usually do thank you cards for people at the end of the year, because the other thing is building that rapport. I have had teachers who got a student in their classroom who has a visual impairment, and I see the panic on their face.
They are panicked.
They've never had a student, and they're like, oh my God. And then it's nice to meet with them beforehand, because I can say, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to add more work to you. I'm here to support you. Right. This is what this looks like. these are the accommodations they have. This is what I will provide. You don't have to be a tech whiz. I got that, so being able to kind of address those
And
things.
they can reach back out to you. They're not bothering you, right?
No, in fact, I actually tell people, please call or text me because I'm driving around all the time. And if a student's refreshable braille display breaks at the end of the school day and you got home and it's 5 o'clock and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot, just text me because then I can reroute myself the next day to go to the office and get a new one or that. So I'm very accessible for the team because what we do is very dynamic in nature. And so I really try to be available to the teachers when they need that kind of support. And at the beginning of the school year too, oftentimes when you don't check in with the vision teacher, things kind of go awry. And one example is there was this PE teacher that was trying to incorporate, I forget what it was. It was like rolling a ball or something. And again, never checked in with me. And also it was a PE teacher that I thought that the student was not going to get. I thought they were going to get this other PE teacher, but we never connected in the very beginning. So all of a sudden, the IEP meeting comes up and like, oh yeah, well, he's not doing really well in our unit. He's not tracking the ball. And this
They're
kid
kidding.
cannot visually track. He doesn't have the ocular, he doesn't have it. So I was like, so you just gave him something that he literally can't do, and then you're like, he's not participating. So I'm like, so again, just misconnected, and just being able to kind of, I mean, vision. We are the hub that addresses all the other specialists because vision affects everything. So I
Everything.
talk to nurses, PT, OT, speech, all of it. And so definitely check in with the vision teacher in the beginning, but also vision teachers, please be proactive, be involved and get ahead of the game. Try to meet with those teachers beforehand, try to email them beforehand, try to set up what helps for me is like having up like a set office time where like
Yeah.
I'm always available here. Reach out anytime, call, text, tweet, send smoke signals. I answer it all. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're amazing. I would like to steal you. So, do you do trainings for school districts? Do you do professional development? How could folks listening today get a hold of the great Abel?
Yeah, the website's called Ready Site. Yes, I do. I do have a couple workshops that have been really helpful, and I also do train other professionals on how to do these more measurable assessments. A couple of the workshops that we do is for teachers who do have students in their classroom that have visual impairment, and I love that workshop because everybody gets to put on some sleep shades. I kind of treat them how they kind of treat some of these students, and I will have them touch sticky syrup, some nasty, smelly vegan eggs. That one pair that was like antagonizing basically that student going tickle tickle. Well, we went the workshop together, and I did that to her, and she was like, "Oh," and I'm like, It's not good, right? It came out of nowhere. But at the end, she was in tears. She's like, I had no idea, Abel. I had no idea that this was happening, and this totally helped me understand how I am not like how my behavior is affecting her and how I shouldn't be doing that. And so the other thing too, we, there's this like pieces of not tortilla, it's like a pita thing, but I would break a piece off and give it to the staff member again who's not using their sight. And I was like, here you go. All right, take a bite, take a bite. And I'm like, all right, all done. He's like, that's all of it. It's like, well, see how you didn't fill the whole thing. So you don't know why when food starts and ends. And then I force fed it in her mouth and she was kind of like, ugh. And it's like, see how that's not really nice. Or if you hold it out and you're like, go ahead, eat it. And they're just like trying to bite. So trying to just emulate that has been really helpful with the team with some of the workshops, including playing the noise of a classroom and giving terrible instructions. The was to do a turkey art thing. But I was like, oh, grab it right there. It's over here. Just bet, and then they couldn't
Little,
hear.
little, almost there. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
not be helpful at the Grand Canyon, right?
No, yeah. So doing those workshops has been really helpful with staff members and same with the training. It is really fun. I try to make it fun. I try to make it encouraging. I try to make it delightful. I always bring snacks and food. So those are the kind of workshops that I really like to do because it's educators who want to learn, it's
Yeah.
educators that want to do better. And I love that. I love doing that. It reminds me of the days where I was training adults, but not in education, but not just implementing those things. So that's been really nice. But yeah, yeah. And again, just anybody
So
can reach out.
tell us the website.
It's called Ready Site Go, and it's sight like seeing. And the reason why we called it that was because one of the definitions that I really enjoy for that word was things that can be seen. And I thought that that is amazing. Like I love that, and that's what we do. It's things that can be seen, whether by touch or enlarging or sound. Like,
Right.
and so I really enjoy that naming it that, and then just being able to really implement. Like we are getting students ready. We are helping them see the world. We are helping them be independent and go wherever they want to go, whatever goals they want to reach. Like, and that's. I mean, I don't know. It's again, I have the best job in the world. I really do. I could not have dreamed of anything else better.
That's awesome. I mean, for me, it's the same way in every IEP meeting. I promise you, just when I think they're never the same, right? It's never the same cast of characters. It's never, but you're always learning. I'm always serving the committee. And it sounds like you do the same thing. I'm not like, oh, where's your oral reading fluency? No, I provide her 90 years of oral reading fluency, eric.ed.gov. And it's about access to information and access to services for kiddos. So if you have a kiddo that you're serving, that you're parenting, you're teaching, reach out to Abel if he can be of any service to you. He's amazing. I'm going to leave you with a story, Abel. I was in a meeting, and I am nobody special. And but I've done this is my 30th year, long before you were born. And the teacher was reading her Oregon project. And in the meeting, I'm trying to help you, right? I'm trying to gently correct you. And I'm not an evaluator, but evaluators, are committed to their evaluation. And they're like, do you have any questions? Yeah. Why do you talk like that? I said, so I just wanted, and I'm nodding like this because she does have vision. My parent is standing up, nursing a 2-week-old in the meeting. I mean, we've literally seen it all, right? So that's going on. And it's been very tumultuous. And I said, so you said, Heather, in your like I'm nodding like let's fix this. In your report, you said Heather saw the door and ambulated towards it. And she goes, yeah. I said, however, but she doesn't see. But you said she saw the door. She was born with no eyes. She doesn't have. She has no vision. And she started. So what happens is students that have vision impairments learn their environment. I was like, stop. And I said, I understand that. And she's successful. But if we could just take out that she saw, and she goes, but what I mean, and then finally the parent goes like this, Abel, you don't have to make her any more blind than she already is. Or we could put that in the evaluation. And the lady said, so take it out. Take it out.
You really tried. You really tried throwing a lifeline sometimes.
I was nodding like, yeah. And so, it's super hard for parents. It's hard for educators because we're trying to teach state standards and that amazing state test. But when we give kids access and what they need, we're not trying to give them extra, then they can be included, right? And I think in special education, we confuse proximity with inclusion, right? Yes. Abel and I go out to eat with 2 different sets of people. Abel's at a table, I'm at a table in the same restaurant. That's not inclusion. That's proximity. And so when we give kids that have vision impairments or need for O&M, they will blow us away because they have access to information, and then you can measure acquisition of learning. So thank you so much for being on. You are amazing. And we will get people to get to your site, ready, site, go. So good. We'll probably have you back for a webinar. Would you be able to come back for that?
Yeah, I would love to. Anything to help educators or students or their families, I'm up for it. I'll be teaching and presenting 3 workshops at the California Transcribers and Educators for Visual Impairment in LA in April. So that's exciting. And I thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you do. Yeah. I'm so glad that you're also pleasantly persistent in trying to get kids what they need. And I really, and you're absolutely right about that inclusion piece. I had this one student that had a CCTV, and then they put him in the back because that's where the outlet is. Yeah, he can't sit anywhere else. And I'm like, but the group work is over there. So we're like, can't get an extension cord, can't get an extended battery, can't get somehow, but I said,
problem solving here.
Yes, the lack of problem solving. Yeah. As long as there's that lack of problem solving, we'll continue to be pleasantly persistent to try to help these kids and the adults in the room.
Yeah. I had a kiddo and they were using electronic braille, and the teacher's like, well, it takes so much usage, it's dead by the middle of the day. So that it's dead. I said, well, you can charge it. Well, we don't have a charger for it. Would you like one? Well, I mean, I guess. So did you want to if there was a problem, yo, I'd solve it. Like these are like, it's like you could plug it in like your phone. They do. No, it just charges at home.
Oh my God.
So sometimes, Abel, I look at people and go, I'm glad I don't have a student loan from college. Right. So, thank you for being on. You are a delight. We will catch up again soon. If you guys need his services, Ready, Set, Go. He is in Sacramento. He's amazing. Remember, you guys, when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. We will see you guys in the next training. Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.